All right, well, we are going into this series called the D Word, which is all about discipleship.
Is it in the book of John?
We graduated.
You're behind us, Luke.
I had a verse that I could have brought in from John.
Yeah.
But no, not John today. I really feel like, despite the fact that discipleship is the core mission of the church in general, I'm talking about the Big C church, whether you're talking about Live Oak, Catholic Church, Baptists, or whoever, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Either way, discipleship is what we're supposed to be about. That's the Great Commission. You stop and think about it. Jesus said, party words basically were, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, right? And so you'd think we do this well. I mean, it's kind of like telling Apple, okay, go and make computing devices. And they went out and they did it. They did it well. I'm not an Apple fan, but I can't argue they make a good product. Regardless of your Apple opinions, or mine for that matter. Anyway, the whole reason I kind of went with this idea of the D word is because the church, we talk a lot about discipleship, but we don't do it well, and we don't like to talk about the nitty-gritty of it, because there is nitty-gritty. Because we have lives, and they get complicated, and stuff comes up that we're like, okay, what do I do here? I'm not sure. This isn't under the Ten Commandments, so or the Great Commission. So I mean, what do I do in this circumstance? And we're like, we just kind of flop around on the ground like a fish. And so we have problems dealing with that, and it's in the nitty gritty of life when things come at us, and we're looking for a verse. What does the Bible have to say about depression or whatever else? I don't know. Whatever it is that we deal with, we start looking around for a verse, and that's fine and good, but the verse doesn't always directly address dealing with. It's like, it doesn't say, ye who are depressed, take hope again in the Lord. It doesn't quite say it like that. It'd be nice, but as I've been hearing one guy been saying a lot of lately, he basically has this habit of saying the Bible gives everything we need, but not everything. And I can vouch for that, because God has not addressed all the issues that I would like to have addressed. I can't speak for you guys, much less speaking the clarity in some things that are kind of left up to some interpretation. And let's face it, when you've got two humans in the room and one verse to interpret, we'll probably come up with two different interpretations. So you pile a whole bunch of people in the room, much less a whole bunch of people on the globe, and we come up with a wide variety of opinions. So discipleship can get complicated. Like I said, at least in the U.S. anyway, we've kind of relegated discipleship to Sunday mornings. That's what this is mostly about, right? We spend more time in the sermon in just about any given church than you do in music portion. That's just normal. And so that's kind of become discipleship. Or maybe we do some churches will do a 101 class and a 201 class and a 301 class and a 401 class. And the theory is that by the time you're done with 401, you've got what you need. And that's not really true. It's just, discipleship is complicated because life is complicated. That's all it comes down to. And I want to kind of talk today about one of the odder things in discipleship that, or maybe a better way to say it would be one of the unexpected things in discipleship. So, I want to look at the gospel. Okay? I know reading the side of growing.
Keeping it simple, it's smarter.
Mark chapter 5. And this is not your normal discipleship chapter. Which we're not going through the whole chapter by any stretch, but still. Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 1. All right, here we go. So they arrived on the other side of the lake, in the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came out of the cemetery to meet him. This man lived among the burial caves and could no longer be restrained, even with a chain. Whenever he was put into chains and shackles, as he often was, he snapped the chains from his wrist and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day he wandered among the burial caves and in the hills, howling and cutting himself with sharp stones. When Jesus was still some distance away, the man saw him, ran to meet him, and bowed low before him. With a shriek, he screamed, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In the name of God, I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had already said to the spirit, "Come out of the man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, because there are many of us inside of this man." Then the evil spirits begged him again and again not to send them to some distant place. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on a hillside nearby. "Send us into those pigs," the spirits begged. "Let us enter them." So Jesus gave them permission. The evil spirits came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd of about 2,000 pigs plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned in the water. The herdsmen fled to the nearby town and surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. The crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting there, fully clothed and perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. Then those who had seen what had happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs, and the crowd began pleading with Jesus to go away and leave them alone. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with them. But Jesus said, "No, go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he's been." So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began proclaiming the great things Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed at what he told them. So we get a story about demon possession, right? A man who had so many demons in him, they needed to take a population census. And Jesus arrives on the scene. And the weird thing is that the demon ran to meet him. I mean, I'm not a demon. I don't tend to think like one. I'm pretty good at sinning, but I'm not quite on their level, I would like to think. And they ran to meet him. And as is appropriate, they bowed down before him, and then they screamed at him. Not exactly the normal sort of interaction, I would think. We just don't see that. And so Jesus commanded the demons to come out of him, and basically asked Jesus to take it easy on him. And they saw the pigs off in the distance, basically asked if they'd go over there. And he said, "Sure, go ahead." Being a good Jew, I guess he didn't eat pork. Me, I'd be mourning the loss of a massive amount of David. That's me. And so, at any rate, they just jumped right off the cliff. And normally you hear about this in terms like spiritual warfare, okay? Because, Ephesians says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world. And you see verses like, maybe Galatians, where it's talking about the full armor of God. And we talk about all that. And all that's highly applicable to this, don't get me wrong. But it's not what I wanted to focus in on, because we're talking about discipleship, right? So where's the discipleship happen?
He's sending forth. Send him to him.
Now, here's what's the odd thing, or I guess the unexpected thing, because what we come into the church thinking of, once we get used to the church culture and we understand what's going on. So new believers come in and they kind of hear and they slowly absorb it in and they get it. And of course, if you've grown up in the church, this is what you kind of grown up with, is that discipleship happens between someone who's mature in Christ and someone who's not mature in Christ. So, theoretically, the wizened old sage takes the young believer under his wing and teaches him all that he needs to know. And that's what we think of with discipleship. We think about the mature teaching the immature. And go figure. That's generally the way it happens.
I'll give on the management.
Exactly.
Didn't go.
No, it did. But it generally did as a pattern in that movement. And it does often go well for the church, but it's not commonplace. I mean, just how many of you have ever at some point in time been in a deliberate relationship with somebody where there was discipling going on? And you're like, this is what somebody did. Yeah? You guys are up on me. I never got that.
What we normally see is what was referred to as catch and release.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also talks about planting the seed. Even a little bitty seed, if you go and plant 1,000 seeds, you might not see any of it, but you might see someone else is going to at least you planted the seed.
Sure.
Likely your kids and you have to raise them.
I was just gonna say, even going into the children community, they taught us things that, we can learn something from
Oh,
them,
for sure.
period.
Yeah.
If you're open to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's a good attitude. I know, not that by any stretch, but I try to have the attitude of coming into every interaction with, okay, what is it I have to learn in this? I mean, that doesn't always mean I fish something out of every situation, but at least I'm trying. So, at any rate, I found that to be a good attitude to have. But this man was, I guess you could call him a freshly minted Christian. He had no experience with Jesus beforehand. Demons did, but that doesn't count. It doesn't help the guy out at all. But,
Why did the people of the town tell him
To leave.
Jesus to leave? I don't understand that.
well, I think they were freaked out in general. And I can understand that because if you're used, I mean, you're not, I don't think you're really used to it. This man had been chained up several times apparently and had broken free multiple times. And so I'm guessing the general attitude of the area is if you see him, run, don't walk away.
I thought they told Jesus to leave.
Yeah, I know. But when someone like that, who is stronger than anyone, strong enough to break chains, and that's inhumanly strong, just to be perfectly clear, if someone like that is around, I don't want someone with that kind of strength near me. Who especially,
You don't want someone possessed like that.
yeah, exactly. Especially when he's acting insane and you don't know what to expect. So, I mean, you might walk away from the experience just going, hey, that was a little different. Or you might you might not walk away. You might be broken on the ground. So who knows? So in that way, I think they would have been glad, but I think the pigs especially freaked them out.
Yeah.
With the demons going into the pigs, and somebody lost a whole herd of animals.
Okay, so this was the Decapolis, whatever, that's the
Decapolis,
Greek
yeah.
side. And so these were the people, like Jesus
Yeah.
just literally, he literally came from one side of the seat to the other, pops over on this side, and then does this thing. And people don't know who Jesus is. They don't know much about him. He comes into the scene and he's spending time with this man. And so, that's why they're like, you just need to go back where you came from. They're not understanding the spiritual
Yeah.
implications.
So while they had a good deal of exposure to Judaism, they were not Jewish themselves. That's why I think the version we're reading here calls it the 10 towns region or something like that. The 10 towns in the region. I forget exactly how it's said right now. But a lot of versions say the Decapolis, which is totally Greek. Deca meaning 10, polis means city. So 10 cities, literally what that means. So it was a region where there's 10 towns. And like Tom said, it was on the non-Jewish side of the lake. And so there was some intermingling, there was some understanding, but there wasn't a deep understanding. There wasn't a comfort with concepts like that.
He made an impression.
He sure did. And they had no objections to raising a herd of pigs. Jews they wouldn't have raised a herd of pigs.
I don't think they were any different than we are today. We always think about the economic side of things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when they lost 2,000 pigs,
Yeah.
that was a big.
Oh, that's true too. I didn't think about that. Like, you need to go, because you just cost us all this money.
But somebody was out a lot of
Then
money.
you'll
No question about it. 200 of anything.
The owner didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be like, wow.
Unless he was a part of the crowd, we just don't know.
Might have been protecting Jesus from the others.
Yeah. But what I really love about the story is that after the man settled down, after he saw what Jesus had did for him, he understood some measure of who Jesus was. At the very least, this Jesus was more powerful than the 1,000+ demons in him that caused him to be strong enough to break chains and freak everyone in the neighborhood out. And just with a word, and they just left. I mean, that affected the man, and he just, well, he sits down, they get him some clothes, and he's just sitting there eating, taking in the presence of Jesus and the disciples. And the townspeople come back. This time it's a whole mob of people, and they see what had gone on, and they just freak out. And so, yeah, they did. They asked Jesus to leave. It's like, this is definitely not in my comfort zone, and it just cost Bob over here, $10,000 or whatever the things were.
They'll be talking about that one for a while.
Yeah, probably a lot more than $10,000 in modern days.
The sad thing is, even today, people know about Jesus and that could still happen.
Yeah.
Because they're still freaking out.
And
Be like, oh, we don't need this one.
now can't be freaked out. So, yeah, certainly. But it's just not the right attitude. The man himself, the demon-possessed man, had the right attitude. So let's reread that little paragraph right here. That's, yeah. Okay. So, let's see, which, 20? Yeah, I want to back up a little further than that, though, actually. So then those who, let's see, 15. Crowds soon gathered around him. They saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting there, fully clothed, perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. So he just sits there, literally just it in Jesus' presence. Then those who had seen what happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs, and the crowd began pleading with Jesus to go away and leave them alone. And as Jesus was getting in the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Now, if your life's been changed by Jesus, that's a pretty understandable reaction. I mean, not everyone is like, I want to pack up and leave everything I know, but there's a very realistic chance this man didn't have anything. That any of his possessions had been probably sold off to pay for the damage that he caused. Nothing else buying multiple sets of shackles, right? So, nothing else. That he probably didn't have anything. His family wouldn't have anything to do with him anymore. So he's like, I'm all in. And Jesus said, no, go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been.
You know, a lot of that's about changed it, but I mean, there's a lot of times in the Bible when he heals somebody and he tells them to go and tell people.
Yeah.
Like the that's discipleship.
But unlike
It is.
the people that have a physical problem or health problem, you would think the person possessed would have no knowledge of what he had been doing or going through. And so after, the demons had left him, he'd be like, okay, what am I doing even standing here?
I mean,
It's some of
it
it.
could be. I really don't know. And I haven't spoken at length with anyone who's been through a significant demon possession. So I couldn't say. It could be that, they have no memory. It could be that they may have just kind of been passengers in their own body. And they saw everything that was going on and they were aware. I don't know. couldn't say. But either way, even if it was a matter of I have no clue what happened, there's still a significant chunk of this life that's missing. It's like suddenly they come to their senses,
Yeah.
like I'm in the middle of nowhere
Right.
and I'm naked in front of a crowd of people. So let's face it, Jesus and disciples equals a crowd, small crowd, but a crowd. And like I'm here, and I thought I was at home or wherever he thought he was. That's just incredible.
It sounds spot on, like a tale of recovery, like drug addiction or something.
It might be.
Bipolar, manic depressive, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, but what I love about all this is how Jesus tells them to just go tell others about what Jesus has done for them, what God has done for them. There wasn't, okay, let's stop and let's sit down. Now we need to go through the Gospel of John together, and then the book of Acts, and then we're going to look at some of the epistles, and we're going to find something. You've got to know the Romans Road, okay? So all these great scriptures in Romans, you got to know those. And so, or actually, since this wasn't around, he could take them through the book of Isaiah and said, see, look how I am Christ. I've fulfilled all these prophecies so far. And just to give you a sneak preview, I'm going to fulfill the rest of them too. Yeah, he could have done all that, sat him down, taken him in as a 13th disciple. And the guy was more than willing. I mean, he was begging to go. And for whatever reason, Jesus said, no, you just go tell people about me. And this is discipleship. And this is a part of our problem in the church, is that we have this way of thinking about things, and we split things, this into two pieces. Okay? Discipleship is evangelism. Evangelism is discipleship. We can talk about them to understand what phase of discipleship we're referring to, because if a person doesn't know who Jesus is, then that is where we start. We explain to them who Jesus is, what he did on the cross, their sinful nature, and all that, so that they know the bad news and the good news, and so they can basically make the same life change that this man. And that doesn't take Romans Road. It doesn't take a whole bunch of stuff. All it takes is you understanding, to some degree, what happened to you. That's it. It doesn't take much. There's a guy I've been listening to for years and years now, named Peyton Jones. He's a church planting expert, I guess you could call him. And so when I started looking at how to church plant, I found a podcast called the Church Planter Podcast. I started listening to it. Peyton Jones is one of the hosts on it. And his story, just a small snippet of it in a way, is that basically he was a teenager and he heard the gospel, came to Christ, and he's basically, okay, now what? And youth pastor, who was the one who led him to Christ, said, well, we're going to meet up at the park on Thursday. I don't know what day it was. They were going to go to the park, and there were some other kids from the youth, and they were going to go disciple and share the gospel with people there at the park. That's in Southern California. So even in the 90s, that wasn't the most friendly environment for the gospel. So it was definitely that's what he was asked to do. And that's what this man was asked to do. And this is not a one-off thing. We seem to think that we need to graduate with some sort of certificate or diploma in Bible college or something in order to go and do something for the kingdom. And that's never the case. That's something the church has kind of built up, and we may not use sometimes we use the certificate because I guess we like to hand out a piece of paper, but it's not something that's biblical. You don't need a degree in order to disciple someone, especially if you're a new believer. You go out and find all the people you know who are also unbelieving people, and you start discipling them by telling them about who Jesus is. How they're sinners, like the rest of us, and that they need a Savior. It's not rocket science. All it takes is your story. That's all. And like I said, this is not the only place it happened. I picked one other place, and this is going to be a guy who, aside from Jesus, is probably most known for being a disciple maker in the Bible. So this is Saul, or as we've come to know him, Paul. And it's in Acts chapter 9. And I'm not going to go through the entire thing. I didn't put this on because, I wanted to make you guys read your Bible. So this one's not on the screen, but in John, I'm sorry, old habits die hard. Acts chapter 9, we see Saul's conversion. He's on the way to Damascus to arrest Christians and probably kill them as well. And he's on his way there, and he gets a blinding light that literally blinds him. And he hears Jesus talk to him. And basically, they finish going where they were going. And God speaks to a true believer in a vision and says, hey, look, I want you to go find Saul of Tarsus, and I want you to go kill him. So he does. And Saul is a believer, as far as we can tell from that moment on the road on. And when Jesus introduced himself, basically to Paul, he became, but he's still brand spanking new faith. And so what happens is that in Acts chapter 9, it's verse, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Let's see. So I'm going to start in verse 17. So Acts 9:17 says this. So Ananias went and found Saul. He laid his hands on him and said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road, has sent me that you might regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Instantly, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he got up and was baptized. Afterward, he ate some food and regained his strength. Saul stayed with the believers in Damascus for a few days, and immediately he began preaching about Jesus in the synagogue, saying he is indeed the Son of God. Paul didn't know much. He had an education, so he had learned. What we see is that the Jews in the area couldn't stand up against Paul's arguments. Paul had learned logic, reason, rhetoric, whatever you want to call it, in his training, and so he was able to bring Old Testament scriptures that he learned about the Messiah to bear about Jesus. And suddenly it made sense to him. He had a bit of an edge, that he had some training there, but make no mistake, he was still a brand new believer.
He had literally divine intervention.
Yeah, he sure did. He did. Divine appointment outside the road. And so he changed. And that's all it took. Even if he didn't have any knowledge of the scriptures, it was still the same thing. He was saved, and he was with those people just for a few days. And it says immediately. I don't know if it was immediately after those few days or immediately during those few days. But either way, right off the bat, he goes and he starts talking about Jesus. So I'm here to tell you, you are hyper qualified, okay? You are uber qualified to go and disciple people. I don't care how old you are or how young you are. You're qualified. The Bible talks about how in each of the Gospels, well, 3 of the Gospels anyway, Jesus tells people that, hey, there's basically going to come a time you're going to be arrested for my sake, or you're going to be put on trial, whether in a formal setting or just kind of in front of your peers or whatever, but you're going to be on trial one way or another. And Jesus says, don't prepare something to say. And you don't need to have a planned speech. Okay?
I think sometimes when you're talking about the scriptures, if you get yourself out of the way and let God talk, you don't need anything prepared. It seems like that opens a conduit.
Yeah. I want to say it was C.S. Lewis, but I'm not sure. It might have been someone else, Spurgeon. But at any rate, somebody said that basically you don't need to defend Scripture. It's like a lion, just open the cage and let it go. And God doesn't need our help defending him. there's going to be lots of times people are going to ask you questions, whether they genuinely want the answer or whether they're just trying to screw you up. But they're going to ask you questions, and the honest answer that you need to be willing and able to provide is, I don't know. You don't have to have an answer. Because you're never going to be able to address everyone's concerns. No, you're probably not going to be able to find a single person in this world that you're going to be able to address all of that person's concerns. One person, I don't think you're going to be able to find that one and just be able to say, okay, let me deal with every single one of the issues you have between you and coming to faith in Christ. You can't. They may not even be able to remember them all at that point.
As I turn, for me, it's best if I keep my mouth shut, because I'll trip up on something, but I can show people by changing the way that I live, and just, telling them that Jesus is the reason I'm different now.
Yeah.
They're gonna watch as soon as you claim to be a Christian. They're gonna start watching.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, and they should. Because,
You're supposed to be a reflection.
yeah, we're supposed to be different. If you act the same way at work that you did before, as you do now, as a Christian, something's wrong. Something's haywire. And they have a right to look at us and say, I don't want that. And I don't want to be part of a religion that doesn't produce change for the better. I know I'm screwed up. I know my kids are lying. They don't even have to say a thing.
As you roll their eyes, actually.
Anyways.
I get plenty of that, yes.
Roll your eyes.
You need to come hang out.
Never seen a woman that didn't roll their eyes.
Right? Well, I don't know any person who doesn't do it. But anyway, you get my point, is that the whole thing is that we don't need to wait for something. There's not a certification. There's not a set of scriptures you have to memorize. These things are helpful. I'm not going to lie, they are. If you go to Bible college, you get, bachelor's, master's, doctoral, whatever kind of degree. If you go and you memorize the Romans Road, all these things are good and helpful. But in the end, it's just that. It's helpful. It's not necessary. Every single one of us can get in that situation, and whether it's discipling someone who's an unbeliever, hopefully toward belief, or like Cephas said, planting the seed, or whether it's a mature believer helping a newer believer come deeper into the faith. Either way, it's still the same thing, doesn't it? You look right at it. I know I've said this before, but it's so very true. It's the gospel that moves each of us, not just out of unbelief into belief, but it moves us to maturity. Every single one of us, it's the gospel that moves us further. It's responding to his grace, his sacrifice, who he is, and understanding better who we are. All the same aspects that are there as part of what we call evangelization. It's what moves us from immaturity to maturity. So we have things planned. Just urging you to do it. You don't have to sit down and have a formal relationship. Oh, that's great. You can, by all means, get into one. But it can just be a conversation over coffee or over at the breakfast table. It can be anywhere. It can be, while you're doing work at your job. Remember what I said earlier? That the complications of discipleship are in the nitty-gritty of life. That's where you're going to run into things. That's where you're going to be able to tell people, it's like, hey, this is what God has to say on the subject. This is what the Bible has to say about depression, or whatever it is that you're dealing with, or your coworkers. You can keep sharing things with them. And that can move them in maturity. Maybe that's the first step for them. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Either way, we can do this. We can do this for each other here in this building. We can do that outside of this building with anybody.
In my own life, I find it's the people that I want to pretend if they're not there. They irritate me. They frustrate me. Oh, I just don't wanna.
The
It's
public.
those people that I know God's saying, go. God's saying, go and just be a friend. And right now, I feel like in our place in history, we want to keep people at arm's length. We don't want people in our house.
It's safer like that.
We don't want to talk. We just want to get on our phones or just be ourselves and that is not what God's calling people like David. People are important. That's the only thing we're taking with us to heaven. is people. Yes, Terry.
Cheesy one-liner. You only love God as much as the person you hate the most.
That steps on that.
Which is a little bit, I don't think, yeah.
Yeah,
The nitty gritty is the people. It's all about people.
yeah.
The people get in the way. And I'm a people, so I get in the way.
Yeah.
The more people you let into your life, the more complicated it gets.
That's why I like a small church.
In my experience.
I have something you're supposed to.
So,
You have to watch
I
it.
shut them off.
thing is that it really does take use
You know, it's here.
getting your hand, not only your hands dirty, but it means getting probably the rest of you dirty from being a part of somebody else's life. That means sometimes having to put up with their drama or their irrationality or whatever it is that's driving you crazy about that person. And it's like if you step into it and you can show them a clear way to God and to a good, healthy resolution in these situations, then you're offering hope to people. And that's a big part of what we do.
Don't you think sometimes it's just time to tell them you can either live in drama or you can go this way?
Yeah, that's discipling them. Yeah, you can live in drama and you can make this worse. You can like throw yourself up. Yeah, you can take, like, let's be honest. Our love lives is typically one of the areas that people are least willing to give over to God. But I've seen it before where people have given up dating to get themselves into a better place and then come back to it later on, and they've been able to have better relationships with them. And so if we can step into somebody's life and say something hard like that, hey, well, maybe you need to take a step back from dating for a year or two. People don't like hearing that. But hard truths are what we need often. And so that's just one example. But the point is that if it's kind of like doing dishes, you got to get into the elbows. That's all there is to it.
Personally, I think you're right. I think that we can look at Jesus and say, once we've given them Jesus, we've been there, and they continue to turn away from him. We can dust the feet off, dust the dirt off our sandals, and go on to the next person.
I heard someone talk about burning bridges. They talk about it's not. They always say it's not proper to burn bridges, but there's people in your life that after you talk about investing all your time and stuff with, you burn that bridge because you move on.
I tend to think of it in terms, to Rob, your analogy there, like a gate on the bridge.
Yeah.
It's not that it's torn down and destroyed. It's like you don't have access until a condition or multiple conditions.
Exchange.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. So like if you got somebody who's an alcoholic in your life, hey, I'm not going to have anything with you until you give enough alcohol or whatever. So there's things like that. Yeah, either way, we got to get into people's lives, and there's some pain and uncomfort that goes with that.
It's so people-y out there, though.
It is. I get that.
That's a good word for it. I thought
I thought God, he needs to come down here and deal with some of his children sometimes and say, my last nerve. I'm probably one of them.
I get on my last nerve a lot more than anyone else does. Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to the Father and pray for help, because this is what I'm asking you guys. It is a big deal. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying we all have a responsibility. We need God's help fulfill that. So let's go to him. Lord, I do thank you for your goodness and your grace. Thank you for what you've done to save me. Thank you for the kindness, the goodness, and just help me to share that. Don't know who you are, who have this false idea of what you're like. I just want to, I mean, if they're going to turn away from you, I'd like them to at least know who they're really turning away from. Help us each to step into the lives that we don't always want to step into. Let's be honest, we don't usually want to step into. And to share with them who you are, what you've done. Just like that demon-possessed man, he's went home and told his family, told people around. It's like the woman at the well, after you changed her life and opened her eyes, she went home and told everyone she could tell. That's what I'm looking for from myself, and it's what I'm looking for from everyone else. That we would be people who are eager to disciple a world that needs more of you. Help us to do that. Help us to step into these situations where we can point out a road of wisdom and godliness. Show them how relationships are done right. All the things that you've asked us to do. Help us to do that. We're supposed to be agents of reconciliation, reintroducing people to you. We need the power of the Holy Spirit. We need the right words in those situations. And I recognize, weirdly enough, that the right words sometimes feel awkward and clumsy and like they feel like the wrong words. But for whatever reason, it's the right words at the time. Help us to step up and do it. We need courage, and we need wisdom, and we need divine insights sometimes. So whatever it is that's needed in that situation, we're asking for. Pray for this in the name of Jesus.